it's very important for those of us who are obese. Obesity is measured when we check the body mass index, also known as the BMI, which is the ratio of your weight over the height in square. BMI actually tells where you belong, obese. So the when a patient is obese or when someone is obese, we measure that by knowing what the lipid disorders in the body could be. So some people can have bad cholesterol, and this bad cholesterol always form plaques. Plaques are accumulation of fats inside the patient comes down with stroke. So sedentary lifestyle for those who drink a lot of alcohol, smoke a lot of cigarettes, eat a lot of junk, eat anyhow, they are candidates for heart and kidney disease. Age is also a factor. The older you become, the more vulnerable you are to this kind of diseases. Diabetes is also a risk for people who are diabetic in nature. They need to be taken care of to manage it well so it doesn't extend to become heart disease. Please, can I have the next slide? So, looking at hypertension, which is our area of focus tonight, hypertension actually means high blood pressure because of the word hyper means high. So, what are we looking at tonight? What is hypertension itself? And who is a hypertensive? When you say somebody is hypertensive, who is that person? We also say, why do we worry about it? Why do we have to worry about hypertension? What causes it? What are the prevalence of hypertension across the world and Nigeria in particular? How do you know you have it? How is it treated or managed? And the role of drugs in the management. So this is what we shall be looking at. And we expect that at the end of this program, you should be able to lay your hands to know this information and be able to pass it on to others. So next slide. So what is hypertension? Hypertension is the persistent uh, minimal level of BP that puts an individual at risk of having a premature cardiovascular disease. So when somebody is hypertension, it means that the blood pressure of that person is beyond the normal range. And when somebody is hypertensive, the person can have what we call cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular means cardio and vascular. Vascular means blood vessels. So it's a disease of the heart and the blood vessels. The hypertension to 140 over 90. Now, let me speak about this very well. There are bodies across the world who come out with researches onto what the minimum range. Now, the American College of Cardiology, in conjunction with the American Heart Association, has come out to also say that for patients with hypertension, we can classify them as patients who have a blood pressure that is above 120 and below 130. So that means 120 over 130 to 80 over 90 are considered normal. So the blood pressure goal in the European countries different from the blood pressure goals in America because their cardiology association had come together to say, based on research, this is what we consider a normal range. But there is a global flexibility for specific categories of patients. And these patients are patients who are diabetic. So for their diabetic patients, their blood pressure goal is pegged at 130 over 80. So if a patient is diabetic or someone is diabetic and the person has a blood pressure of 130 over 80, that patient is considered doing well in terms of blood pressure control. But when they have above that, they are considered hypertensive. So we look at what hypertension is in the next slide. And this talks about how hypertension. The next slide, please. Now we have the primary or essential. Please go back. Primary or essential hypertension found in 90% of adult population. Now these are people who are having a just close to the normal range, like let's say somebody is having 140, 135, 138, and we found this in 90% of adults. So every one of us on this call tonight, if you have checked your blood pressure in one way or the other, and you have seen about 138, 137, up to about 140, so you are known to have what we call primary or essential hypertension. While for secondary hypertension, are patients having it with a known cause. These are people that have way above 140, 150, 160, 180. Then you should know that there is something that is leading to that hypertension. There is something that is behind it. You understand? So when somebody is having a very high one, that is secondary hypertension, there is something causing it. It could be high lipids, it could be congenital, meaning that person have heart disease, or the person is suffering from kidney failure, or the person has some other factors that is, hovering around why the blood pressure is going up. So investigations and several diagnoses usually reveal that in conjunction with drug management. So why do we worry? The next slide. Why do we worry? What are the effects? Why do we worry about hypertension? Why would is one of the leading causes of stroke, heart failure, and they didn't worry about it. Nobody was doing anything about it. They just eat and continue their normal life. And these effects come up. And okay, so we also look at why we should worry. Because most of the deaths that we see, about 30 hypertension. Next slide. 30% of all deaths is due to hypertension, and 74% of death from hypertension is due to stroke. So 30% of all death, and 60% of death from hypertension is due to heart failure. So we can see that hypertension needs to be more properly monitored and managed. If not so, it becomes a very worrying thing. Now we go to the three diseases are considered to be one of the reasons why hypertension can set in. People that are of 40 years age, people that are 40 years age, people that are male or female, either you are a male or a female, if your both parents are hypertensive, you are 50% at the chance of becoming hypertension. Then we have people who live in urban areas. For example, in Nigeria, those that live in busy areas where they don't rest, where they don't have adequate sleep, are prone to have hypertension. Race is also a factor. For blacks, black are very, very, very predisposed to hypertension. Then we have other diseases. So all these things I have mentioned are known as the non-modifiable predisposing factors. Non-modifiable means that there is nothing you can do about it. The family you belong to. You are born into a family. You find yourself living in a particular place. You cannot just change it easily. The race you are a black man, you are a white man, you are whatever. You don't have control over it. And when diabetes sets in, you don't have control over diabetes. You can only modifiable. Now let's look at the modifiable factors, the ones that are within our control. The non-modifiable factors are those ones that they are not within your control. You don't do anything about. But let's look at what we can control, which is one of the things that leads to hypertension. These ones are just factors that we need to look at. But the ones we can control, we found out that most people are find it very difficult to control. Next slide. The modifiable factors. We have number one, the body mass index, BMI. I've told us earlier in my introductory speech how over your square, your height in meters, your height in meters square. That's how to calculate 425. It shows that you are overweight and tending towards obesity. Another modifiable factor is stress. We must learn to manage stress. Stress is a very, very, very uh, key. So when you are stressed, your body hormones from the adrenal gland, when they are high in the body, they can make us to age early. Another factor again is alcohol. When we do a lot of alcohol, the alcohol breaks down in the body and is stored as fat. And when it is not properly digested, it contributes to high blood pressure. Smoking also leads to hypertension, it's a predisposing factor. Then our diet, when we don't eat cooked food, we don't eat home prepared meal. We are always after canned food, eateries. Those foods contribute to our to hypertension. The sedentary lifestyles, for those of us who are nonchalant about our health, we don't rest, we don't find out time to do exercises. We are just maybe one-way traffic. These things are within your control. You can control these things. If you can control all this, be rest assured that you have solved about 60 to 70% of your problems when it comes to hypertension management. So let's look at the prevalence of hypertension. Let's look at the prevalence of hypertension. Prevalence means in what category of people do we find hypertension? Between 15 to 35 years contributes 9 to 18% of people who have hypertension. Then we can see that from people greater than 40 years, out of every three people, one of them is hypertensive. And I'm sure this is the age group that we all belong to. We are above 40 now. And if we take one to three people, at least one out of every three persons is hypertensive, either primary hypertension or secondary hypertension. So we look at the hypertension awareness and treatment control. This is actually a research that was done between the north and the south. It talks about people who have hypertension and how it is controlled or where it is prevalent. So you see that the white part of that graph talks about the north, while the black part talks about the south. You see that it's basically the same almost everywhere. So hypertension is not prevalence based on certain locations. Based on certain locations. So basically, if you live in an urban region, you should expect that you have more people with hypertension there than when you live in rural regions. So next slide. How do we know you have hypertension? We all know that hypertension is one of the things that we call the silent killer. It does not show any signs. So there are no signs for hypertension. It won't tell you the day it is coming.
And the prize is $100,000. I had just forgotten that everything here is easy, but I still sat on the chair. It's very difficult for me to
2 hours after the second challenge starts, do you want to sleep? If you want to hit the throw a dart, it says you have to do 10 setups.
Someone is not
Shade style, please unmute. Shade style, please unmute.
Shady. Shady style. Shady style.
I think I will not survive this.
Monserrat.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh no, this is not stay here much longer.
She unmuted again. Can the admin just mute her from his end? Okay, thank you. So there is no symptom for hypertension. Regular BP monitoring will reveal if you are hypertensive or not. So when you check your BP and you see that you are hypertensive, the BP keeps going up and going up, then you should know that hypertension has set in. And the only way hypertension manifests in the body is that it targets we look at the role of drug. How is it treated or managed? So there are two ways we can manage it. It's either we manage it with the non-drug method or the drug method. The non-drug method is also known as lifestyle modification. Please, can you go to that slide so that others can see how hypertension is managed? No, not this. The next one after that. Good. We have the non-drug, which is lifestyle modification, and the drug treatment. So the non-drug treatment may be that blood pressure will lower by themselves when you avoid stress. Then cholesterol level, our glucose level, or insulin abnormalities can trigger hypertension. So all these things.
The school is known for its high reputation as one of the best in Ogun State, southwest Nigeria, molding leaders in different spheres of human endeavor for socio-economic development of Nigeria.